Morals Sleep at Night. Narrated by Julie Abel. Narrated for Cupido in collaboration with SAGA. Tantric Pleasure by Bergen. It was spring, and I was about to wake up from the hibernation that had kept me celibate for the last few months. The winter had almost taken away my hope of ever experiencing again the pleasure you could pursue together with a woman. I'd been separated from my wife over the past year, and also lost my job as a result of the heavy burden I'd felt after the breakup. My self-confidence was at an all-time low. I now lived in a small apartment and had enough time to keep myself busy sexually. However, only in theory, through literature on the topic and films that clearly showed how it should be done. Perhaps it was not so stupid after all, as I'd gotten ideas and knowledge about sexuality during those months. Should the opportunity present itself, I would handle the matter quite differently than I'd done during the 10 years of my marriage. I first saw her one morning when she was in a cab right outside my block of flats. As I came out the front door, she smiled and rolled down her window and asked for the name of the janitor of the flats. When I realized she was about to move in, I offered to help. It wasn't necessary, she insisted, and invited me to stop by for a cup of coffee later that evening instead. She was a beautiful woman, with long reddish hair that flowed down to her shoulders. I spent almost the entire morning fantasizing about what kind of sophisticated erotic adventure the two of us could get up to together. She fitted quite well with the fantasy of an open-minded, cultivated woman who yearned for a man with insight into cultivated sexuality. I knocked eagerly at the door and heard a distinct, "Come in." She sat at the kitchen table. I didn't notice at first that the chair she was sitting in had wheels on each side. There was red wine on the table in front of her, not coffee. "Fancy a glass? I'm celebrating that everything is in a place, in the flat. The only thing left to do is to put the books on the bookshelves." We enjoyed the good Spanish red wine together, and she turned out to be an interesting conversationalist who might not be a complete stranger to my thoughts about eroticism. Her book collection included many titles that I had read during the winter. As we eventually moved into the living room, I picked up one of them lying on the floor and said it must have been an interesting read. She smiled in surprise and replied that tantric yoga and philosophy were a very interesting direction of thoughts. She'd enjoyed it a lot. Inwardly, I screamed with joy, realizing all my dreams could be about to come true. "Some of the tantric techniques have Western variations, you know," I said, and approached the topic of carezza, or sexual intercourse, as the exchange of sexual energy. She obviously knew what I meant, as she smiled slyly and wanted to know about my experiences on the matter. It put a dampener on the conversation, and I felt like a schoolboy for a moment, full of unrealistic fantasies and without a second of real-life experience. But when she said, "I have yet to meet a man who knows about this, but I seem to have finally met one," I began to feel hard, the blood throbbing in my loin. My courage had definitely returned, and I thanked her for the compliment. I got up to pour some wine into our glasses. When I walked up to her, she put her hand on mine and said, You wouldn't refuse it.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?